Hey everyone, welcome to another video. So in this video, we'll try and understand the implications of GST on legal services, wherein we will specifically talk about the services provided by advocates, senior advocates, a firm of advocates wherein you have minimum two, and then the services provided by the arbitral tribunal, which is basically a private tribunal where the arbitrator is the main person referred to by one of the parties. And his main role here is to resolve disputes arising between the two parties. And that entire setup is called the arbitral tribunal. So on legal services provided by these folks, let us understand the GST implications. So if you have advocates or senior advocates or firm of advocates or even the arbitral tribunal providing legal services, if that is provided to a business entity in India, and if that business entity's turnover, aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year, if the turnover is not crossing the 20 lakh limit or the 40 lakh limit for GST registration, then that business entity or the legal services provided to that business entity will be completely out of the purview of GST, or it will be exempt. If legal services are provided to any other person not being a business entity, and where of course the aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year is not exceeding the threshold limits of 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs, then again on this particular transactional legal service provided there is no GST, it will be exempt. Legal services provided to the government, departments of government, you have fractions of government, anything provided to the government in terms of legal services by advocates, senior advocates, etc., there will be no GST also on this, it will be completely exempt. And finally, you have advocates, senior advocates and firms of advocates providing, helping other firms, other advocates by way of legal services. On that also, there will be no GST because it will be completely outside the purview of GST, it will be exempt. Now, what happened was, when service tax came into the picture many years back, initially service tax was said to be levied on legal services by the government. But then the Bar Association of India objected to this, and they went to the government and said that this imposition of service tax on legal services is basically a violation of the constitution of the articles. They said that client confidentiality gets compromised in this particular thing because under service tax you have to file your outward supplies and your service tax returns wherein you have to mention client details. So client confidentiality cannot be compromised as far as legal services are concerned. And lawyers per se are officers of the court and not businessmen. And because of all these factors, the government did take it into consideration. They paid heed to the request of the Bar Association and took away service tax on legal services. This continued under GST also, because under GST, as we discussed just earlier, most of the services that are provided to business entities or persons not in the threshold limits, to the governments and to other advocates, all of this is exempt under GST. So what the government did was, yes, they did pay heed to the request of the Bar Association, and they removed GST on legal services by making it exempt. But what they said is that if the client or the recipient or the other party, if they are liable to register under GST wherein their threshold limits are crossing a particular limit, which is 20 lakhs and 40 lakhs, those recipients or those clients will have to pay GST on reverse charge basis. Normally GST is on forward charge, where if I'm supplying goods to you, I pay GST on forward charge. But the government said that, okay, I cannot do forward charge because you guys have come to us and I cannot levy GST on legal services, but I will levy GST on the recipient by way of reverse charge, where he will be liable to pay GST. So then came the concept of reverse charge, wherein if legal services are provided to business entities or persons where the threshold limits are exceeded, in this case 20 lakhs, 40 lakhs in the preceding financial year, aggregate turnover, if it's exceeding, then this business entity or the persons will have to pay GST on reverse charge basis. That is what RCM of legal services talks about. Now, what all services come within the ambit of legal services? Of course, advisory, consultation, representation services in any branch of law come within the purview of legal services. But if you have advocates or legal firms providing rental services or actual services, or even sometimes you have advocates who are CAs and they also provide certification services and other consultancy services, then those are not included in the purview of legal services, and GST will apply on these. Now, as far as registration is concerned, most of the advocates do not have a GST registration. Why? Because point number one, most of the services that they provide are exempt services, like we discussed before, because they're providing services to governments, they're providing services to business entities and persons whose threshold limits are not crossing the 20 lakh limit or the 40 lakh limit. They're helping other advocates, all fall within the purview of GST exemptions, therefore registration is not required. Number two, if there's a person providing only services where it is subject to RCM, which is in the case of legal service, because one, there can be legal services which are exempt, or legal services where the recipient or the client is liable to pay GST on RCM basis. So if there's the service provider and the services are all subject to RCM, only providing those services, there's no requirement to get a GST registration. Any other legal services provided not falling under this or this, then registration will have to be taken under GST law. Well, I hope I was able to make things clear through this particular video. If you like the video, you could show support to us by hitting the like button. If you want more videos like these on regular basis through way of notifications, you could also think of hitting on the subscribe button. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and thank you.